Good morning, listeners. Miriam Kyomugasho. This is the Uganda Diaspora Talk Show on Civic Space TV. And today we're going to be talking about the UNAA Convention and how it can facilitate development in Uganda. Today we have Dr. Henry Ssali from University of Toronto, a Ugandan who's living in Canada. We have Albert Bakasara from Washington, D.C. Albert has been a regular panelist on Civic Space TV, the Uganda Diaspora Show. You are all welcome, our viewers. And let's start with you, Albert. What was your experience from the UNAA Convention and being a regular and part of the executives? How did it go? I missed it, unfortunately, but I think a lot happened since there were elections, and especially we go to UNAA Convention to connect with the Ugandan government. As far as development is concerned, we receive officials from Uganda, and then we connect with the Ugandan community that is living, especially in the side of United States of America and Canada. So how did it go, Albert?
Thank you, Lynn, and good morning, good afternoon, where your viewers are. Well, let's see, how was it? And I thought for a moment that I had actually lost you in the crowd because I didn't see you. And I'm like, Lynn said, Miriam said she's going to be here, and you were not. And of course, I just said Lynn's name because, as you said, she's not feeling well. So we wish her a speedy recovery and hope to be with her next time we do this. The UNAA Convention was a success. Now, success, of course, is depends on some people's perspective. So this is my personal opinion. It was a success in that we had a huge crowd, a huge turnout, which was expected because people have been cocooned in their homes and in their areas all through the COVID lockdowns. So we're beginning to get out. So people came. The highlight for me, what made this UNAA convention a successful one, was that we got a new constitution. You know, there are people who come for the party. There are people who come for all kinds of things. I specifically went to see through the work that myself and my colleagues have been doing for the last 3.5 years, and that was ushering in a new UNAA constitution. Because most of our fights and most of the things that have been really keeping us behind were engraved in that 2010 constitution. You'll be surprised. Those who did not agree with it, probably never even read it. And those who didn't care about our progress as a community, just latched on a few loopholes and really exploited them. And of course, that crystallized our divisions as a community. So about 3.5 years ago, we were charged, a group of really diverse group of people, academicians, engineers, lawyers, and I happen to be one of them. And we've put in the work. We held over 150 meetings every other Sunday. There was even a time when we started doing them every Sunday. That's a lot of work that you're getting as a community free from a good group of people. I'm talking about professors, lawyers, engineers. And we looked at this document of 2010 that governed our organization, and from beginning to end, to see what is it that we can do to bring that document to modern times, and also what are the pain points that have been making us fight. And at first, we didn't think we will have an AGM. UNAA has not had an annual general meeting of members for, I don't know, for 8-10 years. So because the quorum in the old constitution required 40% of the members. So that was one of the things we had to change, because 40% of the members was really not attainable. So the new constitution changed that to 10%. So we will always have a quorum. The new constitution also required that people who want to be elected into UNAA leadership will have to have attended these AGM meetings. So actually in the future now, people will be looking where the AGM is, instead of us looking for them, or the leadership looking for them. Hey, come attend the meeting. So that was one. The other highlight for me was the way we conducted ourselves, especially in the AGM. Yes, these campaigns usually bring us the worst out of us. But I thought overall, people were tame, people's tempers were calm. Yes, there were a few scuffles here and there, and things did not really go well leading up to the election itself. But overall, I think people were willing and ready to see change, and the ushering in of a new document was a highlight for some of us. Now we will see, of course, where that takes us. But I think, yeah, like you said, what was it? How did it go? I thought the vending area, the hotel itself was very accommodating to some of our enthusiastic conventioneers. And yeah, we didn't have the presence of police harassing people, and I don't even know of a case where somebody was taken away, but those things do happen at some conventions, but this time was good. The other highlight that I could highlight for you was we were not overwhelmed by a huge delegation from Uganda, and that's a good thing. First of all, it was always a waste of taxpayers' money, and some of us have been saying it for a long, long time. So there was a small delegation, which should be an adequate delegation. Come represent Uganda, but do not come here to party at the taxpayers' expense. Come, let's have productive conversations, and I think that happened this time. So I guess for me that was also positive. So I'll stop there, and I will add on as the conversation goes on. And I do apologize, you won't be able to see my face today because I'm packed, but this area is not really that well. If I open, and then you'll have some noises.
At least we can hear your voice, Albert.
Thank you.
Henry, what was your experience? Last time I talked to you, you were on the way to Dallas. How did it go for you?
I was on the way to Dallas indeed. Unfortunately, I did not have as much activity outside of the work that I was supposed to do as electoral commissioner. I think I want to echo my seniors' thoughts that it was a success. Indeed, UNAA was a success. In terms of how many people showed up, how many exhibitors showed up as well. The few times that I got to interact with the delegates, you could see the vibrancy within the rooms, within the hallways. I think it was an amazing experience for most people who are able to come in and see how things work. I think it was a success, to be honest. Of course, I spent most 2 entire days in stuck in a hotel room, trying to ensure that the voting exercise goes well. I think most people will appreciate the fact that this time around, even though we had a paper ballot, you could see that the exercise was going well. People were allowed to vote. I wish there were more people who actually participated in this exercise, because at some point we were waiting for people to come in and no one was coming in for hours. But Saturday was good. All in all, many people came in to vote. those who are registered voters. So I hope in the future, more UNAA delegates will register to vote and participate in the voting exercise. What else can I talk about UNAA? Of course, the parties were there. So for those people who are interested in party life or vibe life, I think they had a lot of options, different options. I thought that the venue was amazing for people, both for the people who are paid delegates and those who, because there are some people, when you come to UNAA, some people come to UNAA, but they're not really registered. They are Ugandans who come to the same hotel and hang around. But those ones were also given an opportunity to party, like to enjoy the vibrancy and the vibes around. And I thought that was good.
Talking about voting, you know, in 2026, the Uganda as a government is organizing so that the Ugandans in diaspora can also participate in national elections. So when I was looking at the UNAA voting experience, at this age in time, UNAA members are still required to physically go in the event to vote, which is a cake. I mean, if we are talking about participating in elections in Kampala, but we still cannot organize elections in USA, and where we have members who have access to technology, they have the knowledge, and we are still looking at the physical world type of voting. How are we even going to participate in elections in Kampala in 2026? And using what type of technology? Albert, you've been in UNAA for a long time, and it's good, even Henry, part of the Electoral Commission. But why can't there be a technological facilitation so that members can vote, can participate in decision making, can participate in general assemblies virtually? They don't have physically to be at the venue all the time, as they have other commitments, or they might not be able because of the distance.
Very, very true. And I have to kind of qualify your comment of Albert being in UNAA for a long time. It is true. I started attending UNAA conventions in the late 90s. But I had never been interested in UNAA leadership until 2019. So that's really not that long ago. Yeah, okay. And I was convinced, and I came into leadership. I was the deputy speaker for a couple of years. I even ran for vice president in Cincinnati, as you remember. Mm-hmm. And then I stayed on the Constitutional Review Commission until this Dallas convention when we passed it. So that has been really my extent in UNAA, in the leadership and the fights and everything, and understanding how UNAA works. That has really started since 2019. But directly to answer your question, yes. And this is exactly why I said that the convention was a success, because we managed to put a convention in place, a constitution in place that will empower the Electoral Commission of UNAA to do that. So the old constitution had that loophole that we could not do online voting. People had to come. Obviously, times have changed, and some of the executives that have been in UNAA have taken advantage of that, and they did the same thing in Dallas. Because if you remember, if you were following, leading up to Dallas, there were about maybe 50-something people that were thrown off the voters' roll, saying, "Oh, they paid a different amount of money." And for some of us who have even the faintest idea of how a system works, we kept scratching our heads. We're like, how is that possible in this day and age in America to have a system that allows some members to pay a different amount of money than they're supposed to? Like, what happened? So the system was broken. So the new constitution now has taken care of that. And that's one of the pain points because we started in 2017 in Miami. I was there, where we had different voter registers, and even the treasurer had to resign. And then in Cincinnati, it was the same story. So Dallas did not fare better, but I guarantee you the next election, that will not be a problem. And the reason is, now the new constitution requires that everybody pays one flat fee of $50 from October 1st, that's when the financial year begins, to September 30th. So there will not be any problems. There will not be a system that allows this person to pay this much. No, it will just be $50 for everybody. And whoever is on the roster as of 30th September, those are the members of the UNAA for that year. And that's what we'll use as the record. So if you come and pay because you just want to vote, and you pay on at the beginning of September August, 30 days before the election, then you will know that your $50 is only good for 30 days. No one is forcing you. You can wait until you pay for the next year, but everyone will know that we're all operating under the same structure, under the same rules. So yeah, can we move and have online elections that are safe and secure, and then go ahead and even reach the point where we can vote for elective offices in Uganda, for the president, or members of parliament? Sure, we can. It's not that complicated. The USC has been doing it for a long time. Military members overseas have been voting. Even Kenyans now are voting. So we can do it. Except I'm assuming that process would have to be handled by the embassies. And I have to say, like I have been saying, our embassies are overstretched, understaffed. I mean, when I use those words, they understatement, really. I mean, think of a staff of 9-10 people at the embassy here in Washington, D.C. 10 people serving in a country of 350 plus million, with a population of about 150 Ugandans. It's not even a drop in the water. I'm not even sure what I can call it. That's kind of equivalent of the rain that actually never touches the ground. You know, let's say it rains and the cloud it evaporates in the air before it hits the ground, because it's not even a drop in the water, in the ocean. So if now it's going to be that they add, among the things that the overstretched embassy is doing, that now they are going to add on elections, it's really going to be chaotic. So I'm not sure how they handle that. But yes, to answer your question, we can do better, and we will do better under the new constitution in allowing UNAA members to vote from wherever they are. We can even do a hybrid. Those who are on the site, they can vote in person. Those who are online, they can vote in person. It's not really that complicated. Especially in this day of and age of Zoom and video calls and security codes and all that, it won't be a big problem. Again, that will be decided by the Electoral Commission that my friend here sits on. They should sit and decide independently what kind of election to have. In the past, we had asked for ballot papers. They said, no, it can't be done. It will take forever. Well, it was done in Dallas, and the sky did not fall. So it looks like the past executives have been taking care of these taking advantage of these loopholes to sustain them in UNAA leadership for whatever reason. But I think that era is gone, and I don't even want to dwell on it. We're just excited for some of us who have been fighting this long war of seeing reforms in UNAA. We're just excited to see these reforms pass. And now we're going to wait and see how the new the administration of Lambert implements them. They're not that complicated. And plus, this is not a document that is written by Chinese or Cubans. We're here, the people who wrote it. If they want to consult us, we're also UNAA members who have a stake. There's nothing that is stopping any of them from giving Albert a call or giving. We can even direct them and say, oh no, that's Article 7. It was written by Dr. So-and-so. Reach out to them. And they should be able to come and explain to you how. But if they don't want to reach out, that's fine too. But there's a new document in place. And now we're kind of legally bound to it. Because some of these things might end up in court, and you have a document to cover you. So this is a document that the new incoming executive should embrace as much as us, the people who were really vested in seeing it through. They should also embrace it because it covers a lot. It covers it gives them legal cover in their actions and operations of the organization. Because there are a whole bunch of liabilities that were out there that past executives were doing that really could have led some individuals to be in legal trouble. We've taken care of all that. So we'll see how we move going forward.
Dr. Ssali, you are on the Electoral Commission. Your take on that? Are we going high tech next time, or are we still gonna see the old system dragging us on? You know?
Well, first of all, I have to congratulate my brother here, Mr. Bakasara, and his colleagues for the job well done and for seeing through the new constitution being approved in the previous annual general meeting. Of course, a constitution is a document that both guides the organization, but implementation has to be done, because if there's no implementation of that constitution, then the constitution is dead. I also want to commend him for putting a caveat on how elections can be managed. And the caveat was that the Electoral Commission should be independent and should make that decision whether they're going to run hybrid or just paper ballot or in-person election. That, I think, is a power of the Electoral Commission. My term, as it is, Mr. Bakasara should know this, but my term ends in November this year, which means I may not be on the Electoral Commission in the coming years because I've served my term. My term, according to the previous constitution, is done. According to the new constitution, which I have to look at closely, I don't know how the appointments are going to evolve or to take place. So I'm still familiarizing myself with the new constitution in regard to whether election should be hybrid. That's a question for UNAA delegates to decide, because according to the recent elections which happened in Dallas, many people are very satisfied with how the voting process happened. I think most people appreciated the voting process. Many people, you could hear many people from both camps saying that this voting exercise was free and fair. Now, there's a difference between a voting exercise and the election process. The election process is much longer than the voting exercise. The voting exercise takes only a few hours, maybe 8 and 8, which is about 16 hours if it's for 2 days. If it's for 1 day, it would take whatever hours it is. In Dallas, the voting exercise was free and fair. People can decide to evaluate the election process. That's not my prerogative. In terms of what is going to happen in the future, I guess we are going to have to look at the new administration and see how they decide to implement the new constitution and see what people really want. In regard to Ugandans in the diaspora voting, because Mr. Bakasara has mentioned that embassies are very understaffed and they do not have the capacity to hold such elections. We don't know. That hasn't been passed yet in Parliament, has it? I haven't seen that. Well, the suggestion has been passing around. You're muted.
Electoral reforms are going on. The decision was made, I think, in 2021 court decision. I'm not sure about the year, but so many years back, there was a court ruling that the Ugandans in diaspora, Ugandans in prisons, and other areas of confinement should participate in national elections. And we are talking about forming consensus. I referenced that because of the incapacitation. Most of the time, you would have to look at the local organizations, how they are doing things to be easy to benchmark on how to do other new projects. So I would think that the Ugandan government would benchmark on UNAA, see how the Ugandans in diaspora are participating in their local election processes in order to formulate or come up with a way in how they can mobilize Ugandans participate in national elections. But that aside, you said that the elections went well. But if you look at a real effective election process has to have.
I said that the election, the voting exercise went well. There's a difference between the election process and the voting exercise. I can attest that the voting exercise was free and fair.
Yeah, but let me pose another question to you. But you see, an effective election in general has to have consensus, and if you measure that, the participation, the turn up. Albert was saying there was no quorum for the AGM. So if you have a participation of less than 50%, how effective do you think your electoral process is really?
There was no, the quorum was there. That's why the AGM was there, and that's why we have a new constitution. The quorum for the AGM was there for this election, at least in Dallas, because they mobilized, they organized themselves, they mobilized, and they turned up. They showed up, and they were able to utilize some of the stipulations in the previous constitution, the 2010 constitution, to ensure that they hold an AGM, which eventually produced the new constitution that they are going to implement. We hope that the new leadership will implement.
Okay.
Right? In terms of holding, I think Mr. Bakasara was referring to the challenges of having a paper ballot. There's one thing that this happened in Dallas and it was successful, but you also have to remember that majority of the new council members right now were unopposed, which means we did not have to go through the counting of those ballots because those people were already unopposed. Right? In the future, if we have all council members having competitors and we have to count each one's vote, it's going to take much longer.
It should be done. Yeah, that's why we are saying it should be done technically. Just go sit on your computer and do the computations. You don't need to really.
I think there are pros and cons. In the past, many people are complaining about the fairness of the voting exercise. People have to trust these machines. If there's no trust from the delegates, that is a case that we have to make, or the Electoral Commission will have to make to ensure that the people participating in these exercises trust the processes, they trust the people managing the processes, and they can also ensure that when they go, their votes can do count. Because I think the reason why there's no complaining right now, the reason why the conversation about UNAA is almost completely done. There's really no conversation about UNAA right now. You know why? Because the voting exercise was free and fair according to most people who participated in the election. And I can tell you that over 50% voted. That is unlike other exercises, voting exercises that happen both here in the diaspora but also in Uganda. We had over 635 people vote out of the 1,100 something that registered to be voters. I think that's great that the participation was very high, but also I think people who participated in the elections were really organized and they pushed their people to come to the polls. But I'll let Mr. Bakasara say a word or two in that regard.
Okay. Albert, you have something to say?
Of course, as usual. So, and I'm waiting for Ambassador Mayoga eagerly.
Yeah.
So, because I was with him in Dallas and we were joking how people have labeled us as the noisemakers, and I was telling him that when you are a hammer, everything looks like a nail. It looks like the lazy bureaucrats in Kampala. Whenever there is a voice that is not in tandem with the government message, they're all labeled in one category, this and that. There's no care that is taken to even differentiate who Ssali is and who Bakasara is. They're all they just lump us in the same category. So I'm eager to see Mr. Mayega take on how the convention went and what he observed, and he's been coming. To add on what Dr. Ssali has just said, yes, I completely agree. The voting exercise is different from the electoral process or the election process. The election process was not free or even fair, not even close. First of all, it starts with it started long ago with the picking of the convention site. The convention was taken to Dallas to favor a son of the city to compete. That right there is unfair. Is an unfair situation. And then I talked about 50-something people who were thrown off the ballot because somehow they were able to. They said they tried to cheat the system by paying $20 instead of paying $50 as membership fees. But the person who was in charge of that process was the person running for president. He was the executive secretary in charge of the systems and the voter registration of members. If he saw that was a problem, he could have rectified it. He could have called the people and said, hey, I just noticed you paid $20, but you're supposed to pay $50. Let me see if my system has let you do that. That is not supposed to happen. So he could have changed that. So that's what I'm saying. So they threw those people off, and looks like there was a surgical. It was not done saying, "Oh, you paid $20, so you are off the rolls." Looks like they went surgically picked one who they thought were not going to support them, and those are the people they threw off. So again, that was way before we all went to the polls. To commend Dr. Ssali, yes. He and his colleagues did a very good job in ushering in people, and he's right that most of the people were unopposed. So that kind of smoothened the exercise. So maybe there will be some hiccups in the future, or maybe not. I have to remind you, and maybe even tell your viewers, that the reason why this non-profit organization has even this kind of competitive politics, it's because of how the powers that be in Uganda have mismanaged us as a community, and they use the word mismanage deliberately, because it is true that the government of Uganda should pay attention to an elite group of diasporans living in the US. They are connected, they are wealthier than most communities out there. They are established, and they could also influence policy here, the US policy towards Uganda. So clearly, any government that is sitting in Kampala should pay attention to us. But it should also be a different kind of attention, not the one that, oh, I want the UNA president to be an NRM leaning. No, you should actually be looking for a UNA president to be one that is pro-Uganda, one that is capable in their abilities, and that one that furthers the mission of whatever you want, the country wants to project out here. So, in the past, at least few elections that I've observed, the NRM's sole aim has been to find somebody who is wearing a yellow ribbon. Some of them have been so incompetent. Others have been crooks, for lack of a better word. But somehow they're okay with them. And I'm like, are you kidding me? This person has failed to account for the money of the organization. And you think that somehow brings our community together? Others have been very divisive. It's like, this person is tearing up our community. And that's your best choice for us for this great organization? But they didn't care because those people were in yellow. So we have now a new beginning. The implementation of the new constitution, I'm not hoping like Dr. Ssali. I'm believing. Because why am I hoping? Okay, this is a constitution that members approved. The executive doesn't, the new leadership doesn't really have a choice other than to implement it. If they don't implement it, we will organize again and go to another AGM, and we will literally make those decisions in the AGM. Because our organization, the way it's set up, the supreme organ of the organization is the annual general meeting. If we organize and actually have a quorum at the AGM, we can even fire the president. You know, people live in this great North America, because my brother is from Canada, I'm in the US. They live in this land, but they don't even care to see how it works, what works and what doesn't. Dr. Ssali can tell you of companies where the AGM even fired the founding, the owner of the company. I could quote one example of Steve Jobs, the late owner of Apple. At one time, the Apple AGM fired him from his own company. So when you say that the AGM is the supreme organ of the organization, and this is a membership organization, there's no hoping whether these people implement it. Me, I'm only concerned about the degree to which they implement. Okay, they may be lackadaisical, they may be gung ho, they may do. There's a variations of implementation, but as far as implementing itself, I don't have a question that they will implement it, because they don't have a choice. And if they don't, then we will see them at the next AGM. So again, I think the fights that we've been having, that were won because of the mismanagement of our community that has been coming from Kampala, by trying to pick our leaders, and yet we know ourselves. We know ourselves. I wish you were in the room in Dallas to see the world cheers that came with the change of the ushering in of the new administration. You can see that there's a change. People were waiting for a change. Now, what does that say to the government in Kampala that has been pushing one set of leadership, saying, these are the only leaders, these are the only leaders? When you see people cheering, really deafening cheers of seeing that leadership going, and you have been carrying that leadership as if it's the best. So those are the kind of things that we need to manage. And again, the other one was money. And I still go back to a broken constitution from 2010 that really was pegging us against each other. We now have a new document that straightens our finances. We have a new document that straightens our electoral process. We have a new document that really is progressive. This is a win-win for all of us. It's a win for the community here. It's also a win for Uganda. Because when we're not fighting each other as a community, we're investing, we're working hard, we're sending money here. We can look at other things. All of us have been talking about the convention being a success in its attendance and all that. I did not name attendance as the numbers as part of the success, because anybody can do a convention. There are people who get married and have 1,000 people in a tent. I've attended a couple of those weddings. Okay, so feeding people and putting them in a row and playing music, to me, that is underwhelming for a community of our size, a community of our education, a community of our capabilities. That's underwhelming. For 30 years, we don't have a roadside toilet to our name. We have a budget. We blow about $500,000 on that event. And we don't have anything. We don't even have an office. We don't even have a phone call where you stranded Uganda can call and say, hey, I'm stranded here. And somebody says, you're stranded there? Let me see. Dr. Ssali is next to you 5 streets away. We don't even have that capability. Then what are we doing? So I would never, ever measure the strength of our community on how good a gathering we had on one weekend out of a year. That has never been one of my measures. And that's why I really highlighted the passing of the new constitution as the greatest thing that I saw happen in Dallas. Yes, people will always do conventions. From the first convention to the next one, we'll always do conventions. I think we've perfected that. So I no longer use that as a measure.
Thank you, Albert. I'm glad you highlighted that the convention should be really be doing more than just hosting a group of party makers and dancing out the night away. And that takes us to our main topic today. How can we make the UNAA Convention, or the United Group of Ugandans in Diaspora, how can we use that vehicle to drive investment and development back home in Uganda? We see there are so many other organizations going on, especially in USA. We have the Banyachigezi organizing. We have the Batoro, where Albert belongs to, and so many other groups. And part of their main agenda is how can they contribute to development back home, apart from, of course, uniting people and helping each other, within where we are in our local communities. But the main driving force is how can we participate in development back in Uganda. And how far has the UNAA Convention, this convention and the last convention, and UNAA as an organization, how far has it achieved that? How can we improve on that? Or how can we make that our main agenda, among others?
Thank you, Miriam. So I think there is a misconception, and I've seen this among the people who come to talk to us, even the ones that have very exciting products that they want to sell us, like homes or investment opportunities in Uganda. Because of the fights that we've been having, and because of all the push and pull that has been going in our communities, that lack of cohesion, people don't understand us, especially the people from Uganda really don't understand that. Some people, especially for the leaders of, I can say, because I've spoken to a good section of Ugandan leaders, either at conventions or even when I go to Uganda. I see it's always that in their eyes we never really left. We are Ugandan, so they talk to us as they would talk to a fellow Ugandan on the streets of Kampala. But as Dr. Ssali might add on, we are really not that group anymore. We have come to a community. Some of us are citizens of this land. We have also got an education from this place, formal and informal. So we're no longer really Ugandan, and technically we're not American or Canadians either. We are just a unique set of people in the middle there. So to appeal to us, especially if that appeal is about separating us from our money, which an investment is, then you have to also appeal to our sensibilities. You have to figure out what is it that attracts these people. Where is their money? How do I get access to it? What is it that they value? Because we have a unique set of values that are not Ugandan, that are not American or Canadian either. We've formulated our own group. That's why we are calling ourselves Ugandans in North America or Ugandans in Canada. We're not Canadians, we're not Ugandans either. Or at least in the sense of our behaviors, whether that behavior is investment or how we dress or walk and talk. But our people, our leaders in Uganda have not figured that out. For example, I can tell you, for the people who have been trying to reach out to me personally to invest, usually those investment opportunities come in the sense of buy a house. Oh, Albert, they're selling a farm here. Oh, Albert, buy this property near Crater Lake in Tor and build a hotel. And I'm thinking, you got to be kidding me. None of those opportunities appeal to me. Why would I buy a house in Uganda? I have a house here in the US. I have a house in Toro where I live. Why would I buy another house in Kampala? See, because the people who are trying to sell me a house in Kampala don't understand me. They think buying a house in Kampala is a priority for somebody living in Michigan or Toronto. It really is not. Especially when you have a family and kids. Who's going to live in the house? Who is going to collect your rent? So what I have been asking, if they really understood us, first of all, they will even know that I don't have, as Albert, I don't have $150,000 or $200,000 sitting on my account to buy a house. If they knew that, if they knew me, they would know that. Where is my money? Well, for some of us who are homeowners, my money is sitting in my home as equity. In other words, I can go to a bank and get an equity loan and say, hey, my house is valued about $500,000. I'm halfway there, so I have $250,000 sitting in there. Give me $100,000 in that $250,000. I want to invest it. Clearly, $100,000 is not enough money to build a hotel in Sopoto. Go to another set of money that you would want to access is our retirement. Another money that you want to access, college funds. There are so many Ugandans here who are really keen on sending their kids to college, and they're collecting a whole of money saving for their kids' college fund. That money is sitting there, getting very little interest. Savings, bank accounts. So if you see that kind of money, that's the money that can be pooled. How do you pool it? The Ethiopians at one time had a diaspora bond, a blind diaspora bond. And it's collected, I think, over $300 million in a very short time. Find a diaspora bond for us. Stopping antagonizing us with stupid leaderships of an organization like UNAA that could actually be doing so much. Let us manage our affairs. That's one. Things like public-private partnerships. Give us a contract and say, you know what? Ugandans actually in North America can do that. Find us the way how we do that. Put in people in place. If there's a board of directors, have some of our people on it. This idea of just always talking to us is really getting old. Okay, even when they come, you see on the panel, they sit them there. The way they came on the plane is the way they sit on the podium. You're telling me there's no Ugandan intellectual who can sit with you on the podium and be a panelist? You're telling me there's no one who can talk about Ugandan politics, no one can talk about sciences, just Mr. So-and-so, Honorable so-and-so, they all sit on the podium the way they came on the plane. That is not a way of getting to know us, or it's not even a successful way of trying to separate us from our money. We need to invest, and they're competing with the American investment environment. Why would I invest my money in Uganda if there's a risk that I can't stomach when I can put my money in the New York Stock Exchange? The attachment that they think we still have towards Uganda might be, for some people, it is still there. For others, it's not. Especially for some of us who grew up and have lived here for a long time, we've come of age here, our parents now are dead and gone. Those attachments keep reducing. When you lose parents, you lose siblings, and some of your siblings come over. You no longer have that attachment. And our leadership in Uganda has not figured a way to try and understand us through the lens of us being a unique group of people. They still think we're, as Ugandans, will there. Even when they see their kids, they send their kids here for just education, and they come back, they're different kids. Why would you think Albert has not changed? If your kid who just came here for 4 years is changed, why would I stay the same? So it's I don't know if it's laziness or if it's just they don't care, but they need to understand us in a different way if they really want us to be a force of a progressive force to contribute to the economy of Uganda, which we are already. It's just that money needs to be kind of directed, a little nudge, and even increased. So it's up to the government to understand that us as a unique set of group of people with unique values, unique sensibilities. And if they don't do that, then we'll just be in this circle and we'll be having this conversation for another 10, 15, 20 years.
Oh, thank you, Albert, for that great insight. I think they should make you an investment ambassador for this organization. You are really, really, that's very informative. I hope someone is listening to that.
Well,
Henry,
I hope so.
Henry, your take, how better can we use our energy, our synergy as Ugandans in diaspora to participate in investment in Uganda?
Well, I think my senior colleague here has posed very good questions. First of all, do Ugandans know who we are? Does the Ugandan government understand the potential of the people in the diaspora, Ugandans in the diaspora, Ugandan Americans, Ugandan Canadians? Like he said, we are no longer just either Ugandan or American. We are Ugandan Americans, we are Ugandan Canadians, we are Ugandans in the diaspora. Most people in the America see us as Ugandan, and most people in Uganda see us as Americans. But we're not just one or the other. We are combined. It's a combination.
Hybrid.
Exactly. We are hybrid citizens. And I think what the government of Uganda fails or has not been instituted at is understanding that we get calls for investment where we live on a daily basis, on televisions, on radios, everywhere we go on a daily basis, we get calls for investments here in these countries. So if they think that they can come to the UNAA convention in one or two sittings and convince us, as my brother has said here, that we can go back home and invest in those 2 days, and like we are going to be convinced, and therefore are going to bring all our monies and put them there, that they have to change that approach. That approach needs to change. Of course, it's going to take a lot of education, a lot of awareness, a lot of seminars to understand who is a Ugandan diaspora, what are their interests, what do they want. If they want to invest, where do they invest? Am I going to be, for example, am I going to be interested in investing in Jinja or Kampala, right? What am I investing in and why? Are my investments going to be safe? But I think we also, as we gather in these organizations like UNAA has a responsibility. I think one of my biggest questions is, why do people who want to run for president always go back to Uganda prior to the elections, as if they want to get an endorsement from government? And that is something that I always question myself. To what extent is it important for the Ugandan government to endorse you as a candidate for either position, either president or secretary, whatever? But because most of these people who run for these positions tend to run in teams, you tend to see people who are running for president going back to Kampala and trying to connect with the powerful forces in Kampala in anticipation that when they get those green lights or endorsements or tap on the back, they're going to be voted in as the leaders. I think until we stop that habit, we are going to continue being treated the way we are being treated. That's why you see people come here from Uganda, and instead of having an exercise of knowledge exchange, they want to impart, like they tell us what they think is good for us and what we should be doing, instead of having a discussion and letting each other pick what benefits them. And I think for us to be able to have these conversations, genuine conversations, is hopefully this new constitution will help incoming leaders become leaders of this organization, because it has an opportunity to unite Ugandans, and once Ugandans are united, we can start doing things like the Kenyans are doing, like the Tanzanians are doing. If it's about investing, we can invest here, and Ugandans in the diaspora can benefit in the investments here. But we can also invest in the country, in Uganda, and ensure that our relatives, our attachments that we do have to that country benefit from the collective power, the financial power that the diaspora has built. Now, these conversations tend to become political most of the time. Even when you're talking about investment or finances, people always try to attach it to something else, something that is usually political. But until we are able to have mature conversations that are beneficial not just to ourselves, but also to the country that we were born, because that's what Uganda has become, a country we were born, where we were born. I think that is the strongest attachment that we have. Our children, they may not have that attachment. Or my dad is a Ugandan, my mom is a Ugandan, but I'm really not Ugandan, right? So how do you convince, even when you're making investments in that country, how do you convince your children that these investments are going to be beneficial to them and they should care about them, they should care about their sustainability? Because as we build these investments, we build them, but we do not live forever. So we also have to put that in mind, right? So till the Ugandan government understands that convincing Ugandans in the diaspora to come and invest in their country takes a lot of work, and they need to be given a lot of incentives to come back and invest here. A lot of privileges, instead of being treated like we are not that important to the country. They need to revisit the way they view us as Ugandans in the diaspora, and how they quote us in terms of what we should be investing in, why we should be investing in those in Uganda, and what are the benefits of people in the diaspora investing in Uganda. They should be quoting us at the same level they are trying to quote Americans or Indians or Chinese, whoever they take as investors right now. Their first priority, their easy audience is Ugandan citizens in the diaspora. And I think that is going to take a lot of awareness, a lot of education, which is why also I think for UNAA to become more stable, as Mr. Bakasara has been referencing, that the new constitution is going to help us. That constitution will not help us until the people, the reviewers of that constitution, the Bakasaras, the Wakos, take a deliberate action to educate people in the diaspora, because it's the people who are going to push for the implementation of that constitution. But you cannot push for an implementation of something that you do not understand. So education, awareness. These are the things that we need to do now. First, to unite ourselves, to create trust among ourselves, and then to start utilizing the synergies that we have to strengthen the country that is Uganda.
Thank you, Dr. Ssali. To pick on what you said, I think, Uganda has to take the diaspora community as a priority, being like an investing constituency. I mean, if we are united and really mobilized, we really have a lot to contribute, not only in monetary terms, but also in skills transfer, in research, and so many other sectors. But the problem is that when you see the Uganda government, whenever they try to mobilize or to come into the diaspora and mobilize the community. This is not happening not only in USA but also in UK and other areas. They just bring like handouts and they are mobilizing not as a Ugandan government but as NRM party, like they're mobilizing party support of sorts, and that kind of is a put off so many Ugandans. As we understand, so many people, some of them left the country for political reasons. So if you are going to peg everything, a particular political party or a particular political leader or a particular side as far as politics is concerned, that is going to make so many people run away from you or just avoid you because they don't relate to that side of politics. But if we put politics aside, in my view, if the investment in the Ugandan diaspora, for instance, is formulated from a non-partisan point, like said, the parliament approves this funding is going to Ugandans in diaspora. So we have a ministry, we have a big sector, big government institution dedicated to serving the Ugandans in diaspora, and they basically relate to the Ugandan diaspora community, not as a political leaning agency, but as Ugandans trying to mobilize Ugandans out of the country and taking them as a priority. Albert also hinted about the overstretched embassies. If you don't build infrastructure, if you don't invest in the infrastructure to mobilize that funding, I think it won't be effective, or you won't even have access to the resources or even the people you are aiming to look at. And that is a big weakness as far as Kampala is concerned, as far as the Ugandan government is concerned. You, Albert and Henry, you hinted on that. But to conclude on this topic, before we go to the other, anybody with a way forward, any word, if you want to say something before we leave UNAA and Uganda diaspora issues, please, Albert.
Thank you, Miriam. I think all has been said, and I think some of these themes we're just repeating them. I don't know when it will click, but at some point it will click, and it's beginning to click, because when the funding has been cut now, you see that our government is trying to put in some measures in place and even cut corruption. And even, like I said, the group that came this time from the government was smaller than usual. Why wasn't that done in 2017 when we had the speaker and the deputy speaker and about 78 members of parliament in Boston? Why wasn't that? I think it was 2016. Why wasn't that done? Why did that million go? That million went to West? Why? Okay. Why wasn't it done in Miami when we had a similar large delegation? Okay. So now you do it when you're forced, because you don't have a choice. You no longer can support that delegation. But you don't need to. You don't need to. The idea that I'm coming to make sure, that an NRM person is at the helm of UNAA should not be really that important to cost the government of Uganda and the taxpayers that much money. It really should not be that important. You should be looking for a competent person who can lead an organization, and you work with that person to advance our country, our motherland, the interests of our motherland. I will give you a very simple example, and I don't like mentioning names and personalities and that kind of stuff. I remember in 2019, when then was Major Musisi, now Lieutenant Colonel Musisi, was running for president of UNAA. For some of us who could see the potential, I could just imagine the uniform of a lieutenant colonel walking out here in the halls of Congress or Capitol Hill, trying to talk to senators and Congress people. No door would ever shut when that man stands there with medals from Afghanistan and Iraq, and every door will open. We don't see that. The government of Uganda doesn't see that. No, you will want to bring this person because we don't know about Major Musisi. Sometimes he criticizes the government. So you're putting somebody in place who can't open that door. So you've limited the opportunities of Ugandans living here in North America, and you've limited your access to Congress. So it's like, is it really worth it for this woman or that man because somehow they are yellow? They some of them even lie. Okay, they've never even done anything to further the agenda of the NRM. Oh, we're NRM, and they say, oh, that one is NRM, fine. He should be the leader of UNAA. No, I think we should think strategically, intellectually, and say, no, a Major Musisi with his medals, or now Lieutenant Colonel Musisi with his medals, will go and knock on this committee and advance this policy. You hear of some immigrant communities, they're having their visas for 10 years, like the Kenyans. You hear some who are saying, okay, we will no longer deport Nicaraguans. Those things don't happen in a vacuum. Somebody advocates for them on Capitol Hill, talks to the right senators, talks to the right Congress people. For us in Uganda, we're still talking about UNAA elections in Cincinnati and Dallas and the grand party and how many people attended and the vendors. And yeah, we're like measuring in minors. We're like stuck in reverse when we really could do much. But we just have to think strategically, which is good for the government of Uganda. I mean, I remember writing in an article in 2021 when I was running in Cincinnati, and the title was Uganda, please pay us attention, but a different kind of attention. And what I was saying was like, hey, yeah, we acknowledge the government is going to be involved. This is an elite group of people. If you don't pay attention to them, they could even overthrow the government. Okay, so pay attention to them, but utilize them in a good way that helps you and helps them. It should be a mutual relationship that mutually benefits us all. But our people or our leaders have not grown in Uganda. But I want to mention before we move this from this topic, I want to mention something else that I saw when we were in the politics forum. Honorable Mao and his panelists were talking about the need for us to talk so we don't have the violent upheavals that usually follow the change of government in Uganda. And I wanted to ask a question. Of course, I was the first one, and people were saying, "Oh, ask your question." And the way the panel is set up is that we don't have a Ugandan there. They just come and talk to us. That's how it's set up. That's how it's always been set up. They come, they talk to us. Okay, we don't formulate our thoughts. We don't even explain what we're trying to say. Now I have a platform and I have an opportunity. What I wanted to say, and maybe one day he will listen to this tape. What I wanted to say to him is this. And this fits in what we've been saying about us as a unique group and having unique sensibilities and unique values that we've adopted. I was asking him, they are in positions of power. For example, he's the Minister of Constitutional Affairs. Kids are being picked up from the streets and jailed. Others have been languishing in jails for years and years. Those are some of the values that we've adopted as Ugandans living in Canada and the US. Maybe when we came on the plane years back, we really didn't care. Somebody was picked up, they went to Luzira, we didn't care. Now, based on our education, based on our living environment, based on our adapting American civil rights campaigns, and we're different. We're different. Now we do care. We care when you jail somebody and keep them in jail, in the cells for 2 years. We do care when you pick up somebody in the middle of the night and they show up 2 weeks later with broken bones and their genitalia pierced and broken. We do care. So before you talk to us about investments and all this kind of stuff, you should also think that those are our values and how to address them. Those are our values. We don't know why a person by standing there and having a rally, why the supporters are being harassed. why they're being beaten up. That will bother us when it bothers us when it's happening here in the US, and apparently bothers us when it's happening in Uganda. So don't just come here and say, oh, I'm going to sell them apartments, or I'm going to sell them. No, we have other values. We have other things that concern us. Okay? You may not like to hear them, but we do. So if you want to separate us from our money, you better address them. You better address them. Thank you, Miriam.
Oh, thank you, Albert, for raising that. I will pose that question to Henry. In Uganda, especially in the political circles, they normally say that we people in diaspora, we are sabotaging the development in Uganda by advocating for sanctions, due to abuse of human rights and such issues like Albert said. Yeah. What do you have to say to that? Are we real saboteurs, or we are advocating for the betterment of the country?
I don't think we are saboteurs as some people might perceive us. People have grown to value different goods within our society. So human rights is one of the goods that we value very much. It's close to us, and it is tied to development. We cannot have any sort of development in any country. The reason why we are able to thrive in these countries is because we have a certain degree of human rights. There's a respect for human rights, and that is something that the Ugandan government must, first and foremost, ensure that is available to all Ugandans, whether they are Ugandans in the diaspora or Ugandans on the ground. But specifically Ugandans on the ground, you cannot assume that you're going to go on the streets of Kampala or streets of Jinja or wherever, round up a couple of youth, throw them into jail, and let them rot there for years without even seeing the courts of laws. That is not something that we value as people in the diaspora, and we are going to talk about it. Now, do you want to hear about it? We don't care if you don't want to hear about it. We are going to talk about it until you are able to get the sense to actually listen and act upon it. In regard to why we are not given, most people in the diaspora are not given an opportunity to question these politicians when they come here. That's because of the leadership that we have, because we tend to give a lot of power to the leadership to organize everything and structure the conversations their way. I think it is okay to structure conversations, but I also think that we should let people, especially people in the diaspora, engage in the same manner that we engage with politicians here. Politicians here are able to give us those spaces to question them where we do not understand, where we need clarity. Unfortunately, that's not a value that most leaders take as valuable. And I think that is something that also comes with more awareness on how we should be engaging with each other. I think it is okay to have some control of engagement, but I think it is also fine for people to ask tough questions, especially if they are being respectful. I think if there's no respect, if the dialogues are not respectful, then I agree with how certain measures, that there should be some measures that are in place to ensure that the conversations are respectful, but we should also be able to trust each other when we are having these conversations. Most of the people who come to UNAA are elites. People have spent a lot of time in different organizations here in the diaspora, engaging with policymakers and other important or influential people. So I don't see why Bakasara wouldn't be given an opportunity to question Mao from Kampala, the Minister of Constitutional Affairs, because for some reason, if he speaks his mind, he's going to offend the listener or the person perceived to or seen as the one supposed to answer that question. And I think Mao is a reasonable guy who could handle any kind of question, especially in this arena in the diaspora. So it is the people who organize these events, these forums, that should be more comfortable with us engaging with leaders in Kampala, because they are leaders in Kampala, but we are also leaders here, so they should be able to listen to us. In terms of the government of Uganda, recognizing that a person of Lieutenant Mosisi, people of that caliber become the leaders of this organization. If they do need to participate in this leadership, they should come and they should be trusted by Ugandans. The challenge is that we shouldn't always give this power to the Ugandan government. What are we people in the diaspora doing? We are here to vote for these people. If we see that this is the person that is going to better represent us, this is the person that is going to make doors open, we should be able to participate actively, come in big numbers and vote for the person that we know that if this is the face of Ugandans in the diaspora, then we have a few senators' offices open to us to have dialogue, to advocate for policies that favor Ugandans, not just here in the diaspora, but also in Uganda. And that is an onus onto Ugandans in the diaspora. We shouldn't put that to the Ugandan government. Of course, they do invest a lot of money. They do invest a lot of time and resources in these elections. But we need to educate the Ugandans in the diaspora that the power is in their hands. If you're going to continue with the paper ballot in the future, which I think has a potential sometimes to see free and fair elections, we need to ensure that we bring in people who are able to open those doors, not just here in the diaspora, but also back home. Of course, the idea of having hybrid elections, it is something that we continue to engage with mostly a lot of the time. But we also know the challenges of technology and the potential for people to manipulate sometimes those to use high-profile hackers to manipulate some of those results. So those are conversations that we can continue having. In terms of who should be leading us, this is a question for all Ugandans in the diaspora. What are you doing to ensure that you have the right person in the right place to represent you as a Ugandan in the diaspora, first and foremost, to open doors to the Capitol Hill? Who are some of those people that have the cred and trust to let leaders here open offices for them? And which kind of conversations are they going to have? How do you influence these conversations? How do you engage in these conversations beyond just having a vacation, a 3-day vacation or 4 vacation? And I think this is our challenge as people in the diaspora. Most people who come to UNAA tend to just come for vacation because they have been overworking themselves for days and days and days. So they don't really care about the politics of leadership. But that's the most important thing, especially if you are going to have an organization that cares for every Ugandan in the diaspora and also influences policy in Uganda.
Yeah, true. I think we should assert ourselves, and yes, it's within our powers, and it's our duty and responsibility to pick the leaders that really represent us, so we don't have to keep whining about influence from the outside. And yeah, technology, whether we have virtual elections or not, I mean, we have to keep thinking of the ways to incorporate everyone, ways where we can mobilize everybody and see that we are all able to participate in the leadership, and that education, the civic education. People have jobs, different hours of working and all that. How better do you mobilize the Ugandan diaspora, both politically or even to make them aware of their responsibilities, the opportunities that are out there? We are so close, but we are so detached that we can't easily. But with all this technology we have, that shouldn't be our challenge. And I think it's a call upon the leadership of all organizations mobilizing the Ugandans in diaspora to come up with better ways. Let's continue to think of better ways to mobilize the people so that we can speak together, we can discuss and see the best way forward as far as our communities, both here in diaspora and back in Uganda, are concerned. Before we move on, I want to convey apologies from Ambassador Mayega. He said something official came up and he couldn't come and join us, but he will be here next time. And back to the next topic. There are so many issues, so many things.
I just wanted to interject there and let you know that organizations like UNAA can work, because organizations like the Banachigezi works, the Toro organization work. Actually, I think one of the most organized organizations are these federal or like regional bodies. They work more efficiently than the Uganda organizations. And I always ask myself, how is it that Banyachigas are more organized, they're very organized, they seem more united, they seem to actually bring together people to well and organize them better. When I look at the Toro organization here in Toronto or in Canada, they're very organized. They organize very efficient things, and they bring their people together with one voice. Why can't we translate the same into the Ugandan organizations? What is deterring us from doing that, and what should we do to ensure that we translate some of that leadership that we see in federated or regional bodies into the Uganda organizations? And I think that is something that we should be questioning ourselves.
Yes, that's good food for thought, and on a good note at end this conversation. Yeah, we should think about how is it that we are able to organize when we have our localized groups, but we cannot harmonize when it comes to national organizations. Good food for thought, and that leads us directly to the next topic, which is about tribalism, the forbidden word. Bobi Wine, Kyagulanyi, commonly known as Bobi Wine, has been mobilizing NUP, his political party, has been running national mobilization tours across the country, and has been mobilizing his party for the next elections and building support and opening local offices and all that. And something came up, something that usually comes up all the time, and it's called tribalism. Albert and Henry, when we are here in diaspora, we easily talk about inclusivity, diversity. But when we come back to the local politics, when we come to Uganda, you cannot say anything. Then you are tribal. If you say, I want my region to be included in the national development, then you're going local, ethnic divisions, all horns come up and come blazing hot on your heels, and the police even intervene. Oh, let me start with you, Dr. Ssali. How best can we address the issue of inclusivity in Ugandan politics?
Well, this is a hot topic that we should be talking about on a daily basis. My name is Ssali. My dad is Sechitoleko. My grandparents, like, I'm a Muganda, and that's what makes me a Ugandan. I'm first and foremost a Ugandan. You cannot dismiss that. You cannot take it away from me. As long as I continue to identify as a Ugandan, I am a Ugandan because first and foremost I'm a Muganda, right? All of us have our attachments within our regional origins. And I think we shouldn't be afraid of identifying as that. We should be able to comfortably speak about these issues. When we talk about tribalism in Uganda, when you talk about nepotism in Uganda, these are things that are evidently happening, especially within the governing structures right now, right? If we are able to comfortably talk about the Muhoozi project in a country that we know is not a kingdom, even when Muhoozi might be the most qualified man to become the next candidate to be on the paper ballot, I don't see why it becomes a hot topic when some of the inconsistencies in other regions are cited when one of the leaders is walking around mobilizing support for his presidential campaign. First of all, in politics, sometimes things are said that are not perceived as appropriate, because it's politics. Politics, people get angry sometimes. They become judged and they speak the truth, and the truth is not always very welcome among all circles, right? So there are emotions that are attached in some of these conversations. Sometimes it's the emotions of fear, or the emotions of hope, or the emotions. These are some of the dynamics that govern political dynamics, and we can't take that for granted, right? Sometimes in these conversations, the truth will come up, and the truth will not be perceived as appropriate or genuine. But let us go down to the roots of what is causing all these anxieties or the fear about the truth that has been exposed by some of the leaders, right? Would it have been a different reaction if, for example, what Mr. Kyagulanyi said was said by Dr. Kizabe Besigye in Luwero? If Dr. Kizabe Besigye had said the exact same thing in Luwero that Mr. Kyagulanyi said, would we be having the same reaction that we are having because it was said by Mr. Kyagulanyi? Right? When you look at all the leaders in the police stations in Uganda, what does that say about Mr. Kyagulanyi's comments? Right? When you look at the different things that are happening right now in Uganda, let us first evaluate what is happening within, or even just the embassies. Right? How does that translate, or how does that relate to what Mr. Kyagulanyi said? So this issue of tribalism cannot be talked about in isolation of other factors that are brought about this conversation. Instead, what we should be doing is trying to engage in candid conversations about this issue and how we resolve it. How do we, like my sister Miriam said, how do we implement the conversation about inclusion? Because you talk about inclusion in these countries, you talk about diversity in these countries. We are stronger in diversity, we are stronger in inclusion. How do we talk about these things tangibly in the Ugandan context? And what does that mean? What does diversity mean in Uganda? What does inclusion mean in Uganda? What is equity in Uganda? How do we talk about this? How do we engage these conversations candidly without becoming emotional and diversionary about the real issues that affect everyday people in Uganda?
Albert, your views on that? Henry is asking, how do we engage? How can we engage in this discussion without raising dust or
or running afoul of the law,
headed to Luzira on a police.
yeah, exactly. So I think the conversation, we're not having a conversation in the abstract. It's a conversation that has been echoing in Kampala, in the leadership ever since the 2021 elections, when this young novice politician ended up gaining about 58 members of parliament, mostly from the central region. And then clearly there are people who are paid literally to dismiss such an achievement. So it's just Baganda. It's just Baganda. But most of the people that were knocked off by NUP MPs in Uganda were really staunch, stalwart, and some of them were reputable names. I can name a few, but you all know them, that were displaced by these young NUP candidates. So to explain away the losses in in the most influential region of the country, they said, oh, it's tribalism. And that's where the genesis of this conversation and what Mr. Kyagulanyi said recently, that you have to put that into context. Now, what are the facts? The facts are, for any political party or political movement, there has to be a base. Even for Mr. Museveni, the base was in Western Uganda, among his people, where he recruited young people like him, and then they went and fought, and that was the base of the NRA. You even go to up north, the base of the Lord's Resistance Army, where Connie's people. You don't go and get a base from your neighbor. You start with your family. Charity begins at home, as they say. So there's nothing wrong with that per se, for you to have a base. If I'm a Mutoro, if I ever wanted to run for president of Uganda, my base would most probably be in Toro. I'll have to convince, if I really want to legitimize, I'll have to first convince my fellow Batoro to support me before the Bashoga can support me. Okay, so that's logical. I don't see any problem in that. Also, in those 2021 elections, you have to remember the constraints, and you also have to remember that the financial reach. Well, how much money did Kyagulanyi have to go and campaign in Arua and Acholi and Kigezi sub-region and Toro? He didn't have any money. So he concentrated his efforts where he could get the maximum outcome. And he did. By God, he did. So for those who dismiss that, again, like I said, those are the lazy, intellectually bankrupt politicians who are just paid to do that. That's all they say. Oh, they see something good, they dismiss it. The truth of the matter is, it is okay for these conversations to come on the forefront, or else we'll have to deal with them in bloodshed, like Mao said. Okay? Let us have these difficult conversations. There's nothing wrong with us having difficult conversations. But obviously, the government doesn't want to have them because they lay the government's case bare. Because you cannot say, oh, Kyagulanyi is tribalistic, and then you look at the appointments, you look at the concentration of the juicy jobs, you look at all this kind of stuff, then you can't say Kyagulanyi is tribalistic. So the best way to deal with it is to shut off the conversation. But shutting off the conversation, it's really, you never shut off a conversation. You only send it underneath. So these conversations are going to continue, as Mr. Dr. Ssali just said. He's a Uganda. That's his identity. You can't take it away. You can't take it away. So I'm a Mutoro. That's my identity. You can't take it away. You can do everything. At some point, they even stripped us of our citizenship. But no, you can't. You can't. I'm a Mutoro. That's what makes me a Ugandan. So we will continue to have these conversations, and we should have these conversations, as difficult as they are. Now, are these conversations that do we have things to kind of, should we have great guardrails in these conversations? Yes, because we are also know that these are also kind of our Achilles heels that cripple and may even lead into some violence in some instances. So should Mr. Kyagulanyi talk about these things responsibly? And I think he has been, to a certain extent, because I saw the clips that they're talking about. I think it was mostly out of context, and whoever wanted to use it for whatever they wanted to use it for is what they did. But what he said was straightforward, and also it's emotional. It's from the heart. If people are trying to shoot you, people are trying to kill you, what's the comfortable way of talking about that when somebody is trying to kill you? When you hear that there's been you just missed an assassination plot, how are we supposed to talk about that? The way you talk to a priest in confession, how do you talk about that? There's no comfortable way to talk about it, other than to scream on top of your voice and say, "Hey, don't do this, because you do it, I can't control what would happen, and you can't either," which is the absolute truth. We all remember how the government in Tunisia fell, where a vendor who was harassed dosed themselves in gasoline and lit a fire. By the end, the riot that erupted out of that action had toppled the government. So, yeah, I don't know today if at a rally like that, if a bullet went through Kyagulanyi, God forbid, I don't know where Uganda will be. And I guarantee you, Museveni doesn't know either. So why take the chance? So if the man is talking about that, it's a difficult conversation. Yes, he should talk about it responsibly, but the people who are also echoing his words, and even those who are contrasting his words, or even those who are condemning his words, should do so responsibly.
Yeah.
We only have one country, and that's our motherland. We're not gonna become Kenyans. We're not gonna. We should take care of it. If something is wrong, we should address it. I think that escapes a whole bunch of people who have become cultists, and they call them NRM cultists. It escapes them so often. Some of them really act and behave and talk with a sense of entitlement, as if some of us are foreigners and the country belongs to them. And that is wrong. And that would be the cause of turmoil faster than any of the words of Kyagulanyi will be.
And these are things that Mr. Muhoozi has also been talking about on Twitter. If you examine Mr. Muhoozi's X space, you will see that these are things that have been coming out.
And the difference there is that he is actually, Muhoozi is actually talking from a position of comfort. This young man is talking from a position of being threatened with death.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, there's no comfortable way of talking about that. But even the people who are condemning it should be. So what do you want to do now? So you want to jail him? Yeah, I see the rallies have been stopped. But the rallies, whether you stop them, they had stopped them for 2 years. Did that make a difference? The moment he came out, people, the crowds gathered. You can stop them for 10 years, you let him out, people will gather. The apartheid government tried to do that with Nelson Mandela. Did it when his influence? No. If he is saying something that is appealing to the people and where they are, if he's speaking to the people where they are, it's going to show. I was joking with a friend. I was like, here is a person who is not ferrying people or feeding them to come listen to him. I hear that whenever there was those rallies for Muhoozi, he would say, "Oh, the food is ready. You guys eat. Don't leave without eating." They pay for the food. They pay for transportation. They pay for everything. Kyagulanyi doesn't need to do that. There is something that there's something he's touching in people. Trust me, I am not a NUP member. I paid recently when they had a convention in DC here because my friends were there. I was like, why wouldn't I go to see my friend? I may not be a NUP member, but it's a gathering of Ugandans. Why wouldn't I be there? So I went and I was observing the room. I was observing their event and the way they were talking, the way they were scheduling. In Uganda, and you read the Ugandan newspapers, and these people, pundits, and they call them hooligans. And I'm sitting in the room and I'm looking at these intellectuals and I'm looking at how they're organizing themselves, how they're treating their leader, how they're talking about their nation and their aspirations for their future. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, some NRM people should be in this room listening to this. Because there are these characters that people do. And then by people, I have already labeled them. I call them intellectually bankrupt, lazy bureaucrats. They have
Yeah, everything to them, because they're holding this hammer, everything is like an nail. Boom, boom, boom. Please don't hold them, put them in this thing. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Somebody should be recording this and sending this to the NRM circles. The people you're calling hooligans have a room full of people. I think there were about 400 or 500 people in the room. They are organized. They're putting on a session. They have invited guests. They have dignitaries. I was like, where are the hooligans here? He stands up. He gives a passionate speech, appeals for his people. He didn't call them to go stab people. He didn't call them to go violent on anybody. He's give them the steps. How do they sustain the struggle in these difficult times? How do they do fundraising? And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. He's the leader in his own right. You can dismiss him all you want. So I think that's what, again, like we said, the Ugandan leadership has never really bothered to figure out a way of who we are as the diasporians. I think it's the same thing that is happening to the conversations around the tribalism and the recent comments from Kyagulanyi. They've really never bothered to even understand who the Kyagulanyi is or who his supporter is. They never, even when he beat them hands down in Uganda, they never went to the drawing board because they dismissed it as tribalism. So when you dismiss it as tribalism, then what's the point of going to understand how he won? You don't. And then when you don't do that political analysis, we are where we are right now, and Miriam is asking the question she's asking. That really the question she's asking should not be existing in this day and age. But because the leaders and the people who have the power have not bothered to figure out how they lost Uganda in 2021, other than dismissing it as tribalism, because that's the easiest thing they can do.
And by the way, not all 58 MPs are Baganda, even though they reside in Buganda. They are people of Buganda. They live in Buganda. They are in one way or the other. They are like the Bakasara, the Ugandan American, the Henry Ssali, the Ugandan Canadian, the Miriam, the Ugandan American, right? They live there. They have chosen to live there. That's their home now, right? But they're not necessarily Baganda, and that's the mistake most people make. They think that all people who are standing in that crowd in Luwelo were all Baganda. Is completely wrong, in my opinion.
I completely know. Absolutely, you're absolutely right. My good friend still remains the mayor, the deputy mayor of Kampala, Doreen, the Mutoro from Mwenge.
Yeah, exactly. True, we are all mixed. And going forward, I think the national integration is going on. You don't expect the demographics of Uganda to stay the same in the coming years. Young people come settle in Kampala from all over the country. But I think the issue of the so-called tribalism, I can even call it regional balance, give it any name. I mean, it's what it is. But I think on a bigger picture, it feeds into nation building. Uganda as a country, how far have we gone since independence, since Uganda was formed by the colonialists? How far have we gone into building Uganda as a nation? How far have we managed to integrate everybody into that picture, into that institution, so-called Uganda? And we see so many people marginalized. We still have regions in Uganda where people still die of famine. And it's such a shame. And we should have this conversation. And to really conclude on this, the issue of tribalism, it's not even tribalism per se, but it's the regional balancing and fair treatment of every other Ugandan equally politically is even enshrined in our constitution. We have the Equal Opportunities Act. We have all those the legit benchmarks that would ensure that we have diversity and the inclusivity in our government, but we don't follow that. And I think, yes, it's good we should have this conversation as regular as any other conversation. It's very important in building our country. And I think it should, Henry would, as an educator, would agree that it should even be incorporated in our education. When we are in USA, we are taught so much about inclusivity, diversity, but in Ugandan education, those things are not there. Maybe that's why when that topic comes up, everybody's shy and they don't want to talk about it in public. Whereas in private, it's the main conversation. But we are running out of time, and to conclude this debate, let's just a word about the catastrophes that are going on in our continent. Libya, Morocco, the devastating earthquake and the floods. Last word, Albert. Any other topic you want to conclude on? Yeah, just do so in a few minutes, please.
Thank you, Miriam, and thank you, Dr. Ssali. Nice seeing you on here. I'll call you after here so we can try to hunt for African food today. On the floods, it's really unfortunate because especially the people in that area there, Morocco and Libya, it's really unfortunate because Libya was a stable place. Again, this is what we were talking about, the political environment. Libya was a stable place, but it also had a leader who never really thought of succession. Turned the country, a very rich country, into a kingdom of kind of grooming. I'm grooming my son to take over. When you do that, of course, yes, you'll have enemies. There were always enemies of Libya. There will always be enemies of Africa. They're going to be there. This place is still racist. It has people who don't want to see us do good. But Libya is really the saddest out of the two scenarios because it's a rich place for people, for a dam to break because of lack of maintenance, because two rival militaries have been fighting for all this time. It's really sad. And that shows you not necessarily of what America did and NATO did, overthrowing of Gaddafi. That Obama even admitted that was a mistake. We can go beyond that. We don't have to always, as Africans, stay in places where people put us. No, we are human beings. We are intellectuals. We can get out. We can use our own ingenuity to get out. So for Libya to be still stuck in that is really, really unfortunate. I watched some of those scenes. It's really heartbreaking. And our condolences, of course, go, but the words don't change the situation that is happening on the ground. So I hope this serves as an example for some of our countries, including our own, where we start talking to each other. As Honorable Mao was saying, we start talking. The only thing I would ask people like Mao is, well, when you are in a hole and the intent is to get out, I think the first thing you do is to stop digging. We cannot have these conversations about reconciliations and let's pave a bridge that puts us in the future when the atrocities have not stopped. When kids are still being kidnapped in the middle of the night, when others are still languishing in jail. Heal those or put a stop to it, then we can start addressing where we are. But looks like every day, every week, every month, the government is still adding on the things to reconcile about in the future. So you ask, okay, when will the reconciliation stop? Well, I say the reconciliation stops when the government or the people who are in charge have stopped doing the nonsense that they've been doing. When you stop, then we can take stock of where we are and then start building that bridge that they were talking about. If we don't do that, then we'll have things like what is happening in Libya befallen us. Because who knows? I mean, the global warming and the changes in climate and other disasters will always be there. What if one befalls us when we're still in this quagmire? How do we deal with it? Will we just sit and watch what is happening in Libya fall on our people? Haiti never recovered to this day from that earthquake. Why do we have to wait for that to happen for us to wake up? So again, I thank you, Miriam. I thank you for this session, and I've always been a supporter of these sessions. Yes, we talk, and whoever we reach, and I thank you again.
Thank you, Albert, and thank you for always turning up whenever you're invited. Last word, Ssali.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting us to say a word or two on the issues of national importance. I wanna thank my senior brother Bakasara for also contributing. Very insightful, and well-intentioned Ugandan. I don't know when people will actually get to see that we have people like him who really have the country at heart and Ugandans at heart to utilize these talents to build our country and our communities within which we live on a daily basis. What happened in Libya, what happened in Morocco, very unfortunate events. I hope the people of Libya will get the courage to rebuild themselves to the stage where they were when Colonel Gaddafi passed on. I pray for the people of Morocco as well. In regard to Ugandans, Mr. Bakasara here has said that we have only one motherland. We're not going to become Kenyans or Tanzanians. We are Ugandans. Ugandans at heart. Home is Uganda. So we love that country because it's our mother's land. It is our motherland. And we need to continue advocating for it, even amidst challenges of difficult conversations. These difficult conversations must take place. In 2016, I asked Mr. Dr. Kizabe CJ if he would be interested in creating a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, because if you have noticed, we haven't really had a Truth and Reconciliation Commission since 1990, whatever, when the war ended, right? So the reason why these conversations cause anxiety in our society is because we haven't had a formal setting of these conversations. That's why when Mr. Kyagulanyi goes to Wales and brings up, talks about these issues, they still stimulate anxiety within the society. If we do have the courage to have these conversations in formal settings and come up with recommendations on how we can rebuild this country, unite all Ugandans. I also posed this question to Mr. Mao, by the way, when he had just accepted his appointment, or when before he was appointed as Minister of Constitutional Affairs. I think when he suggested that arrangement, he was on a Twitter space, and I asked him if he would be committed in establishing a Truth and Reconciliation Commission as a way forward or as a springboard to bringing Uganda together. I think he did commit to creating one. He hasn't yet established that kind of entity. I don't know how much power he has. We know very many ministers who wear those coats but really have no power to establish certain things. I hope he does have that power, and I hope he has the courage before we go into 2026 to create a Truth and Reconciliation Commission where we shall just have honest conversations, candid conversations, not aimed at punishing people, but aimed at understanding each other and rebuilding our community and strengthening that country. And I think if we do have those candid conversations, the anxieties will be minimized, and we shall start having these conversations as regular conversations, respectfully, even when we disagree about how we can move forward, because moving forward is always a point of contestation. This is how we move forward. No, this is how we move forward. Those are conversations that happen even here in America. Which kind of America do you want? Which kind of Canada do you want? So we should start having those conversations. Which kind of Uganda do we want? I disagree with how you want Uganda to go forward. This is what I think I want. But these should be respectful dialogues that shouldn't cause anxiety among the stars, especially in regard to our existence as a people.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Ssali, and thank you, Albert, for turning up today, sparing some time off your weekend to have these conversations. Of course, our condolences and prayers go to the people affected in Libya and Morocco and any other part of the world where people are facing catastrophes, and that should also open our eyes to the climate change that is going on. But so many questions and the comments we are going to Chairman Mo. I will try to see if I can reach out to him. Maybe next time we can have him in this conversation, if he allows. And on behalf of everybody, Angeline, who couldn't be with us because she wasn't feeling well, have a nice weekend, and we appreciate your time, and please come back whenever you get a chance. And to our viewers, please tune in to this conversation on YouTube, and it will be happening on social media and other sites, on Civic Space TV, the Uganda Diaspora show. Thank you so much, and bye.